In a world that forces persons living with disabilities to justify their existence, my next guest makes absolutely no apologies. It's all about the unapologetic life with Wanja Maina. Next. Hello and welcome to Sheila Lives Out Loud. I'm so thrilled you found this channel. Please click subscribe and hit notifications. You do that by, you see that bell, click it, ring it. Yes, I hear you. There you go. Now you never get to miss an episode when we upload. My name is Sheila Mwanyega and we are living out loud at the Waterfront Karen, East Africa's premier shopping and lifestyle destination. Set up shop at a location that's home to local and international brands that treat Kenyans to a feast every single day. The Waterfront Karen, you've arrived. To live unapologetically in a body you've been told to be ashamed of is a political act. And my guest does that every single day. I'm so glad we finally met to sit down and have a conversation that needs to be shared.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be in your channel, and I'm actually one of the subscribers. So yes, I'm happy
I love you, and I thank you for everything that you do. Now, I know you do a lot of advocacy work, especially for persons living with disability. And if anything, you know what it's like because that has been your reality. So take us back to the beginning.
I'm 28 years old, so I was born where I was born, which is in Gatondo. But I wasn't always a young lady or a woman with a disability, really. It was an accident. I think it's an accident of history, or it was a medical problem where the doctors, one of those, you know, the way you go to a doctor, maybe they don't know their job or what they have done. So they tampered with some nerve. So it sort of paralyzed one side a bit. And for me, it has been, I would call it a journey. In the sense that when you're a young woman and then you have a disability in a country, and sometimes I don't think it's really about me as a young woman with a disability, but also the environment, the infrastructure, the frustrating things that at any given time you are struggling to get things done. So I wouldn't say it has been really easy, but I'll also acknowledge that I've had privilege, including being taken to school and having a supportive family. And that's why I feel like a sense of obligation to advocate, because I have a voice and I have privilege. And I feel like it's more or less maybe making life better for other people who are not as lucky as I am. So I acknowledge that privilege and that.
You know, we were having a conversation just a few minutes before we started, and we spoke about a certain office that you had to go to, and you had to go all the way up to the 4th floor. You know, when living in Kenya, you get a really honest feel of how unfair it is, how our planners and how, you know, the setup of life in Kenya today, there's hardly any consideration that's given to persons living with disabilities. And negotiating that obstacle of just getting the day done in Kenya, it's a challenge on top of a challenge. It's already hard enough being a Kenyan. And then you've got to navigate the environment that hasn't been created with you in consideration. And then you're a woman.
And that's what I call the intersectionality. It's like the way in America, they're like, you're black and then you're a woman. Mm-hmm. So in my context, I would say I'm a youth, I'm disabled, I'm a woman. I think that combination in a country like ours in 2019 is not the best combination. But I'm so glad that you've talked about accessibility. And when you talk about accessibility, I think it's a very profound aspect of people with a disability, because it decides whether kids will go to school and be comfortable in school. And sometimes people have said, why don't they take those disabled kids to school? But my question is, how accessible are the classrooms? How accessible are our entertainment joints? How accessible are our offices? I particularly remember around a few months back, I went for a meeting at a certain building. And then I just thought, because I saw the accessible toilet, I thought of using it. So when I went there, it had like shoes, detergents, things put all
It's
over the
basically
place.
a closet for the janitor.
Correct. It had used gloves and everything. So I was like, either, how come, is it that there are never people who would need to use this accessible toilet that come? Or does it mean that disabled people are not empowered to even come to such kind of offices? When you're talking about the office that I went to, you know, it tells you that at any given time, you see, and I've always said, sometimes I like to take controversial positions and say, suffering is not a rite of passage. I don't have to suffer so much so that the journalist can write a story of Wanja and say, against all odds, and then they'll start of how I suffered. I mean, if there's a way life can be easier, why can't we just make it easier other than making sure that every day you're suffering and trying to advocate for yourself, you know? Right. So those are some of the barriers I've seen. They are in many spaces, and I've even seen international corporations that are in Kenya, like a certain, I won't mention it maybe, but a certain eatery food joint. It's a franchise in Kenya. Most of their spaces, including one franchise in Nairobi, is not accessible. Yet in places like America, and I've had the privilege of traveling, they really worry about accessibility and inclusion. So it begs the question, how come they have certain standards for other places, but because Kenya things never work or it's never expected to work, they wouldn't even bother to make a few steps to be. And Sheila, what's good for disabled people is good for us all.
It's good for all of us.
It's good for all of us, because tomorrow someone will be walking, maybe they'll have a sprain in their legs, and they will need the accessible space or the whatever that we've been asking for. So whereas much as there are good progress, there's still a lot of work to be done.
There's still a long way to go. Now, when we first met, it was at the Hague Talks in Nairobi. Right. And you stood up and talked about an incident where, you know, you live out loud. Truly you do. There's absolutely nothing your disability has kept you from. You live fully. You go for the things that you want and believe in and care about. And so you talked about, you know, going to the beach and wearing a swimming costume.
Yes.
And there were people who just couldn't deal with that. Yeah. What did they want you to wear?
Probably a suit, like a kitenge suit. But Sheila, I think for me that is a very bold statement for me. Yeah. Because at the age where we are living now, there's all this whole body image, body shaming. If you're fatter, okay, not fat, like if you're a bit plump. Caviar is the word, I think. You have to, there's this template.
You just don't fit the cookie cutter mold.
Correct.
You're not a certain size. You're not a certain height.
Yes.
You just don't look like everybody else.
Correct. So that template, I think for me in itself, it's very limiting. That construction and that thinking is non-existent, because at any given time, we'll never find a perfect, what is perfect anyway? So when I went to Mombasa, I had gone for other things, but I got a photographer to do photos of me. And I posted those photos online. And I remember even that's how you met with one of the photos. And I was just putting captions and saying, how come even the online people, everybody is asking questions, they are a bit, why? It's because maybe in their head, the template that they have of a disabled woman is when you're seated in your sad corner talking about how disadvantaged you are. But I went to Mombasa. Mombasa is an exotic place. People
it's fun
photos
and it's hot.
Yeah,
what are you doing there in a suit?
Thank you. So I sort of thought of creating that conversation. It might have looked just as a simple photo, but for me it was a whole, and I like to self-advocate and use my experiences to start discussions. We are talking about body image. We are talking about representation of disabled people in media. Now in social media, how has the media conditioned us to imagine of a disabled person? Look at our TV, Sheila, our radio stations. If there's an advert in our television station, it will be a certain organization doing corporate social responsibility, and they'll project disabled children or adults. It's very disadvantaged. They are requiring all your mercy and all your care. I mean, while that narrative could exist, it is not a balanced narrative. I want to live my life. I want to go to entertainment joints. I want to go to Mombasa and have a good time.
Why it's not about pity. Why pity me? You want to live life fully.
Correct.
And in living your life fully, there's no space for my pity. So what do you want me to do with it? But in continuing with this discussion, I also think back about the work that you do, because you started a blog, Hummingbird. Tell me about the blog and what birthed that.
One is that there's all these, it's like a new media kind of a revolution. We are in the new age where with the social media, you can be able to tell your story. And I particularly remember I have certain friends of mine who are disabled. And there's a time I asked, how come all of you, whenever you post photos, you're always like hiding your two walking sticks? Like they'll always be positioned in such a way that unless you like know them personally, you wouldn't know they are disabled. And I asked why, and it's like, I don't want to be asked questions. But the truth of the matter is that if you look at the statistics, Sheila, there are around 6 million disabled people in Kenya. That is according to the official statistics. So it tells you around 10% of us are actually disabled. And I felt that it's important for me to know that I'll be disabled for all my life. There could be, and disabled people will always be born, and there are those who will become disabled, along the way. And I thought of creating, first it was, let's start with this discussion, and then let's talk about other issues. So that when you say a disabled person walking, don't just limit them to their inability to walk. Yeah. They could be interested in other things. They could be artists. And I particularly remember, like, actually, as recent as yesterday, I was somewhere. This guy comes and he's like, hey, what happened to you? Then I was like, you should know my name first. Because, when you get to look at people beyond their limitations, you realize they have a lot of strength, actually. And so I started that blog to change the narrative. And the tagline for the blog is, a story that deserves to be told does not forgive silence. Because there are so many untold stories out here. And if I can't make it to the mainstream, or the mainstream is not representing me the way I want, then because of the power of social media, I'll create my own alternative, quote unquote, and I'll tell the story how I think befits. And it so far so good. People are appreciating, people are starting discussions.
I mean, it's huge. There's more than 100 and what, almost 150,000?
Yeah, 160K.
Oh, wow.
People engage. We talk about many topical issues, and that for me is important.
In moving forward, the Kenya that we're living in today, stereotypes have to shift, and conversations is where it all begins. What would you like to see us as a nation begin to do?
One, the nation should embrace and appreciate that these people are part of your society, you can't do away with them. Two, we also have to introspect and interrogate our cultural backgrounds. Because sometimes we see things from where we sit. I mean, if you look at traditional African society, it had a lot of issues with how they perceived disabled people. And I mean, just if you go to most major communities, these people are perceived to be burdensome, can't amount to much. Probably some relative in the ancestor wronged someone somewhere. And we have to embrace and even start questioning. This is actually just an issue of health. What are we doing? Maybe we can start and saying, are there some of things that are preventable? If not, that discussion for me, I feel that we can even start it with the media. After the digital migration, I think each and every community has their own radio station. Go to the slums, they have a radio station, TVs, YouTube channels, content creators. I feel that because because this is content, we need to start shifting the stereotypes from that end to advertising. And the other time I was asking, how come I never see disabled people, me or anyone else endorsing products? I have the capability to purchase. Therefore, I'm a consumer of your product. But your advertisements don't actually reflect me. And not only me, probably, your average advert is represented by a very abstract. It's not your average person that you see every day. It's an abstract young lady, very slender, as if you are trying to create, and I'm not saying slender people are bad. What I'm trying to say is that we need to even start asking, how come our advertising is not inclusive and representative of
the society, of the population? What does the population look like, Let's just begin to look like ourselves and to tell the stories of ourselves. I remember watching Anthony Bourdain, the late journalist, speak, and he came to Kenya and did a few pieces, and he said, the African story, who's going to tell the story of Africa? And at the end of the day, he says, well, I've traveled all over the world, and in as much as I'm saying this is not my story to tell. It's our story to tell. It's our image that we need to see in all its richness, And I'm so with you on that one, Wanja.
Yeah.
Hey, you
has
don't
to
have
be
to
done.
convince me twice. I
Yeah.
mean, the power with you.
Yes, it's really long overdue.
Yeah.
That thing that I think would be a proper way of making sure that disabled people exist.
Yeah.
It is actually inclusion, and it starts at family level. You know, sometimes people start with the abstract, high level in the boards of society and government.
Yeah.
And I've always said, in our family setups, I mean, most families during Christmas, they'll be going for the get-togethers and the families. Why not ask that aunt of yours, because I know you have a disabled child, how come I never see that child during the family get-together? The family is the smallest and fundamental unit of life. When we get it right at the family level, when we make sure that when parents get disabled children, they don't run away from them. And normally, from what I've observed, it's mostly the fathers who run away from the mothers. So even the children are being brought up in a background of a lot of pain and frustrations, because they know that it's because of them that their fathers left. And we really have to start this discussion at a very basic level.
Yeah.
I remember when we met at the Hague Talk, I was saying I went to some entertainment joint, and I rarely see disabled people in places of entertainment.
Yeah.
And my question is, do you want to tell me all of them don't take vodka? Like, do you want to tell them all of them don't like music
And
You want to
watching
tell them,
artists
yeah.
perform. Of
Correct.
course
and,
they do.
And just you know, interacting and hanging out
And just being a young person in
Correct.
Kenya today, it's almost like you feel like you have to be locked away somewhere where nobody can see you.
Yeah.
But you're such fun.
those are things that I think quite a lot about. And maybe, and now that we are also starting the conversation on mental health, I've actually noticed that most of my peers, whenever they are having discussions, all of them now, because of that exclusion, or always at all given times, they have to justify their existence or to apologize for being around or to feel like they're burdensome. Quite a number of them have been having mental health issues, and
Right.
you can imagine how bad you can imagine now it's like another health problem on
top of another
health
health problem.
Yeah, so
Because we are social animals when you think about it. It is in our very nature to be around each other. And the moment you start secluding other people and setting up groups where these ones can hang out with this, it does come with mental pressure and mental consequences. Your parting shot, you know, you're such a wonderful soul. There is so much about you that I wish I could put in a bottle and sell, because I would be the richest woman in the universe. Because there's a lot of positivity, there's a lot of go get it, there's nothing that is too big for you. You dream big, you live big, you live out loud. So I'd like you to encourage anyone who's watching and has been feeling ashamed, because in this society, it's not even about being a person with a disability. Right from the get-go, we already know we're not perfect, and people will try to really bring you down simply because you don't conform to one thing or another. There's always going to be one box that you don't tick. What would you say to all of us, myself included, to stay in the fight and keep swinging and not give up? Because this life is only one, and you have to live it, and live it unapologetically. What is your advice?
it's unfortunate that society has a way of creating templates for people. For a woman, when you're 20 something, get married. When you're 30, get a kid. When you're this, when you're this. And that template it creates a lot of pressure for nothing. For me, I would say the best thing you can do is to live your life to the fullest potential. Of course, even having a purpose-driven life, because when you have a purpose, then you're sort of working with your own goals and not really the goals that society expects. And it's unfortunate that if the society say when you're 25 get one baby, then when you're 26 they tell you to get another baby who is a girl, because the first one you got a boy.
Yes.
Yeah, the next time they'll say you have to name that uncle of yours who died, so you have to get a third baby. So it's like a lot of pressure to live that. Of course, when there's an intersection like being a young woman, there are all these women should not, women should not. When you're a woman, live out loud, but not too loud.
turn down the volume a little
Yeah.
bit. You're distracting us.
Yes.
You're getting in the way.
Why do you think you know? You think you know too much, you know. That chick is usually very loud. For me, I'd say live your life to the fullest potential. And as you told me, you know, we don't have a lot of time to be around here.
Yeah.
So, you know, you only live once. Live it to your fullest potential. You know, someone said, 20 years from now, will you regret how you lived your now? Most importantly, now that we're talking about living unapologetically, we have to embrace the fact that everybody is different. Yeah. And being different is not a bad thing. When you say I'm different, it's not a bad thing. Then as a society, we need now to start being civil enough and being modest enough to say, this is a person, they are different. If there's a young disabled woman who has gone to school, for them to be able to be employed in my organization, the only thing I have to fix is to make sure that every day the lift is working. Yeah. You know, when you fix that, you fix the problem. So we have to always be very open to the differences of different people and see how to accommodate them. And I think we'll have a better life, because in other countries, it's working. Yeah. In Kenya, we are a bit left behind. But I would say live unapologetically. You don't actually
what you don't have. You just live. You wake up every morning and do the best that you can. It's the only thing really we can. Because it's the only thing in our hands to live and live out loud. Wanja,
yes.
I am your new best friend. In case you didn't know, now you know.
Oh, yeah. I'm happy to have you as my new best friend.
Oh, thank you so much for making the time to be here. I know you're on social media. Yeah. I'm going to tag you, if that's all right, to our conversation.
Why not?
And share that, of course, on all my social media platforms. Her platform is incredible. It's called the Hummingbird. Please check out my social media sites, because I'm going to link those social media handles to her platforms as well, so that we can have these conversations going. Live unapologetically. You are here and you are breathing. You have a purpose and you have every right to be here and to have a happy life. Thank you for watching this episode. We are at the waterfront, Karen, East Africa's premier destination for retail and lifestyle. If you've not popped in yet, where have you been? We have been waiting for you. Come, 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 come. Ask for Sheila. The waterfront, Karen, you've arrived. Until the next episode, live out loud, live unapologetically in everything you do. Bye.